a lot of times high intensity people will just use veterans for an example. People say, oh, they don't want to talk about it. And I challenge that. I say they do want to talk about it, but it has to be the right environment, it has to be with the right folks and in a right setting. And what I do is we talk about it without triggering them. So that's very important too. You don't want someone to relive it so much that all of a sudden there they are.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Raquel Durden. She's an author, a speaker, and co-founder and chairwoman of the nonprofit Humble Warrior Wellness and Yoga. She's also the Georgia Woman Veteran of the Year for 2025. Thanks for joining us today, Raquel.
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year.
We're delighted to have you, and Happy New Year to you as well. So right now, we're in that period of time where a lot of us have made promises to ourselves that we've already given up on for this year. And this is a great opportunity to get our audience refocused on those commitments to our own wellness. So let's start with the book. The title is Dial Down: Holistic Strategies to Move from Chaos to Calm. What was the spark that led you to write this book?
The spark really was an authentic life. I was living this life. I didn't realize how fast I was running when I served in the military, just like you. Do more, be more, figure it out later, just keep running. And after retirement, I found myself to be just very high functioning, making daily lists all the time. I could get a lot done. But I soon learned that staying constantly busy is really like a trauma response, and it can rapidly lead to burnout, whether it's in a corporate job, a nonprofit, or your own hobby. You can take it to the extreme. I started learning different holistic wellness strategies and sharing them with others. And before you know it, I had a following. The following did not happen overnight. It happened from people seeing what I was doing. I actually was really involved in triathlon training, another taking physical fitness, PT, to the highest level. How do you turn that off? You get a podium finish, then you go next, more. Then I had a cancer diagnosis out of the blue. I said, how could I possibly be sick if I'm this healthy and competing? Learned a lot about holistic wellness so that I could be my best during the treatment, even though the cancer wasn't slowing me down so much, if you will. And that illness was service related. So that was kind of shocking too. So I just started sharing what I was doing with others, and people really tuned in, which led to many things, the nonprofit, the book, and everything, but not realizing I was moving so fast myself and being high functioning and thinking it was just good and not like a trauma response or wreaking havoc on my nervous system really led to it. And I'm like, if this is happening to me, it's definitely happening to others.
Yeah, I definitely feel the same way. I look back on my time in the military and the way we pushed ourselves, the way we were asked to push ourselves, especially after 9/11, because I came in active duty in the mid-90s when I was in the Air Force. And the mid-90s of the Air Force, mid-90s to September 10th, 2001, were a very different pace and tempo in the military than September 12th, 2001 and after.
Absolutely. The military teaches us to be so resilient. They equip us with excellent gear. They give us a buddy on the left and right. They give us tremendous leadership. But those were really volatile times, and the op tempo was so high that we might not have gotten the normal reset we did in between. It was like, come back, take a knee, drink water, and get back out into the fight. So I do think you really hit on an era where it was just persistent, high conflict engagement. And we're going to see that wear on people. We're going to see that. How do I dial down? How do I dial down in a healthy way, not a self-medicating or a overtraining kind of way?
Yeah, I certainly see that when I look back on it. When I was in we talked about resilience a lot in the military, but we weren't really talking about resilience. The military taught us to push through adversity, but never how to really recover before we pushed through the next challenge. Like you said, it was take a knee, have some water. What's next, right? So how do we dial down between those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, well, first is a realization. I firmly believe you can be doing everything right, but have the wrong perspective, and you're not going to get the desired results you want. And that leads to, like I shared, overtraining or overdoing or having this incredible to-do list that you never get through. So I want to bring it back to the book just for a moment. A favorite line from readers as well as my publisher was that chaos is not something to fix, avoid, or fear. Chaos is something to navigate. So you and I, we joined the military to do. We didn't want to just, not get our uniform dirty or not be in the fray. It doesn't mean we wish bad things to happen, but we wanted to test our mettle. So realizing like, hey, this isn't going to be an easy job. This isn't going to be an average Sunday afternoon. This isn't just for show. I'm wearing this beautiful uniform, never going to wear out a pair of boots, right? So we have to realize we're not trying to fix, avoid, or fear chaos. How can I weave? That's a big message in the book, is to be a wellness weaver. How can I weave wellness into my day so it isn't this standalone thing where many busy people are short on time? They don't have the luxury of an hour yoga class, an hour massage, to make these beautiful homemade prepared organic meals. We're doing things on the fly. So if we can identify some things, and there's some key categories, like everyone carries around their breath. So have a breathing exercise that's your go-to. When the exhale is a little longer than the inhale, it helps reset your nervous system. So you can do this breathing exercise when you get into your car, when you get out of your car, before you're going to have this high intense board meeting or a difficult client or something. So you always have that as a tool. Then you have to start examining some other things just to be well-rounded again, so we don't take something to the extreme where was once something that reset our nervous system or was helpful or producing the desired benefits and results, and now it's not. It's just another to-do. We're checking it off in a very mindless or scattered way, not a mindfulness way.
Yeah, it's such great advice. And please feel free to go to the book as many times as you want, because a lot of my questions today are about the advice in the book and how we can use this as leaders, both for ourselves and for the people we're leading. And I want to pull on that thread a little bit. We talked about in the military the motivations for why we got in. We talked about why we stayed in. We all had different reasons for kind of why we got in and stayed in, but we stayed in and we pushed ourselves mainly to achieve a mission and to be there for our fellow soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors, Coast Guardsmen. I know you talk a lot about in the book about first responders. I work a lot with startup founders. I work a lot with entrepreneurs. A lot of these leaders feel like if they're not pushing themselves harder and harder, they won't succeed. Why is dialing down so important for them?
So, business people doing a startup, I think the impetus, if you will, right away becomes love and fear. So right away, they're doing this startup usually because they love something and they're really good at it. Maybe it's IT, maybe it's making some kind of product that they're going to sell, or a service or a program. But whatever it was, they fell in love with it. They were good and they went, oh my gosh, I want to share it with the world. They know it so well that they start working, beyond 8-hour, 10-hour, 12-hour days. I just did a consult with a guy who is taking this IT project, and he's doing 18-hour days. And I'm like, whoa, let's hit the pause button right there. So what starts out as motivation by love all of a sudden shifts, and love is very nourishing. When you're following a passion, it's very nourishing to you. But it can quickly shift over into that fear-based, which is very depleting. So now all of a sudden, well, I can't outsource this, or I have to be my own best worker, or I can't take a break, or fear of failure, fear of it not being perfect. In the military, we learn that I was Intel analyst, and we learned quickly that the 80% solution is usually the right solution. If you wait till you have all of the facts, everything is perfect, it turns into a history lesson. And we know Intel is actionable, right? It has to be actionable. It has to be, predictive in nature. So if that startup company, keeps working at this intense hours, and they're waiting for it to just be perfect before they present it to the world or bring in other partners or support, the train is going to pass by. That supply and demand, for the product might evolve, especially if it's technology, right? Things happen so fast. So one, it's like monitoring that balance between love and fear and what's motivating you. Try and lead more in that. And then how can they protect it? Because when you're working that long, typically some things are happening. You're really activating your nervous system. So your blood pressure is going up. Your pulse rate is going up. Your eyes aren't re-wetting themselves if you're staring at a computer or diagrams or architecture plans. You can get stiff neck, shoulders start to rise from tension, all kinds of things. And then that starts affecting your gut health, how you're digesting. And I like to take incredibly difficult concepts and whittle them down to simple little sound nuggets just so we can digest them. And a little peeking window into your health is, how are you sleeping? And honestly, I'm going to say it. How are you pooping? How are you going to the bathroom? Because if you're not regular, there's something going on. You're holding, and that's a sign of fear. Or you have the opposite problem and you're not going to leave the house or the area. But, I say this in a non-clinician kind of way. Those are just little rules of thumb. You can check in like, is this affecting my sleep? Sometimes I can pull a 18-hour or 12-hour. Might affect my sleep for that day, but not the week, or not the average for the week or the month. So I like to identify, and the book is full of them. Here's a little rule of thumb. Here's a little litmus test. I invite you to embrace stillness in a fast-paced world, to develop resilience to life's challenge. But I give you snippets of how, and then you choose, because choice is empowering. And when you're doing a startup or you're serving in the military, a lot of times you didn't have a choice. You were just told to salute the flagpole, move out and execute. Or that startup company, I have to file this. You're living and dying by that to-do list, that timeline, that PERT chart, something like that. And then build a wellness routine that evolves with you. Maybe you realize like, wow, I don't have time to do a lot of these things, but I can food prep on a Sunday. So at least I'm feeding myself something that crunches, good for my teeth, good for my gut health, good for my body. I can have some breaks where I'm going to, get up and do the 4 movements of the spine. I even put it in pictures so you could just like look at it and go, okay, I could set a timer and move my spine that way. Reminders to rules of thumb to stay hydrated, to eat these colorful foods, and why. So I like to kind of share that the book is really written for high intensity people, kind of type A people who can't seem to slow down, either out of necessity because they're facing a danger in front of them, or like a startup, they're their own best worker and they've got to grind it out to make it happen. Or other areas, there's pockets of people that I'm getting a lot of reader feedback now that they're saying, wow, this really landed with teachers, like special ed teachers. Wow, this really landed with IT people who sit in incredibly live, and then they can see what's happening. It is affecting their sleep and their regularity and everything else. So
I'm so glad you're getting feedback on the book. The book's been out a few months now, and I'm so glad you're getting feedback on it from audience you didn't necessarily expect. I want to ask you a little bit about the process of writing the book and getting it published.
Yes. So this was interesting. I never set out to write a book. No one ever heard Raquel Durden say, I want to write a book. I have written in poetry, and poetry is one of those little reprieves I have that, my little escape. Some people journal, I would like to dabble in that. So I was working with Humble Warrior Wellness and Yoga, and this Navy veteran actually came up to me, and she was a clinician, and she goes, Raquel, do you have a book on this? Because, we were doing like holistic wellness, different modalities, choice is important. And I said, I don't have a book. And she goes, well, it'd be really nice if you had a book so we could do a deeper dive. Some people are very interested. But Jason, I've also had the other end of that spectrum where they're like, I believe you. I trusted you as an Intel analyst. I trust you now. Just tell me what to do, and I wanted to like explain the why or the how, so I had both. Then some folks invited me to do some contract work with some big name companies, Fortune 500 companies, because mindfulness is really kind of trending. People, they want to do it. They want to have a program, but they don't really know what it is. So like you said earlier about talking around resilience, they were talking around mindfulness. They could define it, the practice of being fully present in the moment without judgment, but they didn't know how that looked. They certainly didn't know how it looked in the corporate world. So they brought me in, and again, they said, do you have a book? And I was like, I don't have a book. So the seed was planted. Now the seed was watered. Then during COVID, the demand for holistic wellness went very high and very virtual. So I was doing a lot. My nonprofit was doing a lot. And I realized I did my own check-in and went, I need to do something for, to feed my joy. And I signed up for this writing club through Ollie, this it's like learning through the universities for people age 50 and older. There's, I think, like over 120 or 200 or something of them. So I plugged into this group. Well, little did I know I was going to be by far the youngest person in this group, with some accomplished writers, some novice writers, but they took an interest in me and kind of pushed me. And when it was time to like write something or volunteer to read, they were like, why don't we hear from Raquel? Why don't we hear from Raquel? And they're like, you write really well. Have you ever considered writing a book? So I literally like remember putting my pen down and going, all right, I've heard it 3 times now, the whole power of 3 or whatever you want to call it, from very different audiences. So I'm like, what would I write about? And this group was like, well, you write what you're an expert in, or you write what you're passionate about, or if you're lucky, it's the same thing. And I'm like, there you go. It is the same thing. I'm going to write about connection and wellness. And it just kind of poured out of me. So that was my motivation to write. And I framed it up just like it was, a military project. I gave myself 1 year to interview people. I wanted to interview high intensity people like combat veterans, high rescue angle firefighters, swift water rescue firefighters, rookies that were police officers, deep cover police officers. I just wanted nurses during COVID, right? They were at the tip of the spear. So I took a year to interview them, and I said, tell me your chaos. How do you, and then I worked the program. I worked this finding a grounding anchor, finding a mantra, and I spell it out really well in the book. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I've just socialized it a lot and tweaked it to where people can understand it and use it successfully. I've done this with hundreds of first responders and veterans. And I like to think if it works for them, it's going to work for the general population. And so, we flushed this all out. And I said, okay, now I got to write the wellness chapters. And I thought that was going to be easy, Jason. Well, it turned out very hard because there's this thing in a book called your voice. And sometimes if you've ever talked about something a lot, you talk at like a PhD level and not a beginner level. And I realized for this book to be useful for a lot of people, I need to dial back and write it at a beginner level, like at a curiosity level. Like, what is it? What are the benefits? How can I practice this at home? Because as adults, we don't want to be embarrassed. We like our privacy. We want to try this out. And then I kind of ended it with an invitation. So it did take me a year to write the individual wellness chapters. And then it was time to get published. And I tried to learn everything I could about publishing. Here's a little shout out for a tiny little book. It's like 60 pages. It's called OMG, like, oh my God, I wrote a book. Now what do I do? It's by Julie Brand, who's she's a military brat. Her dad was a colonel. And I read it and I felt very empowered, like, wow, this book, because it's so evidence-based and ancient wisdom that has survived, thousands of years, I really wanted to have a publisher, either a big publisher or independent publisher. Nothing wrong with self-publishing, but I wanted that rigor. I wanted it to be tested and screened, and it was, people come back with, we don't want any reference, over like 5 years old, hey, I bet there's a better standard out there with a bigger population or something that accounted for social norming. And I just loved it. I love being pushed to write like an excellent, well-researched book. And then I was like, okay, I know I want this. Now what? And I don't know. I think because I've had this kind of share with the world mentality. I run a nonprofit, not a big corporate salary. I just kind of have this way of sharing things forward, and then it always comes back and just kind of lifts me, elevates me, fills me. And I got a call from someone that I care with very dearly. She was actually a high school English teacher who now runs a successful bookstore. And she said, there's this call for voices. There's this call out, an open readership, like new authors are welcome. And she had studied that during COVID, people were very attracted to nonfiction that was clinical. They wanted to learn about the immunity and cells and, viruses. But now after COVID, we kind of know the difference between self-help and self-care. In self-care through COVID, we now know there's things we can be doing for ourselves. We could be doing for ourselves. I don't like to should on anyone, so I won't say we should be doing. It's just I want to show how. So I looked at it and I was like, I could be one of those voices, and researched it, said a prayer. I had to write the final chapter. I'm sorry, I had to write the final chapter because I didn't know how I wanted to end it. Do I tell busy people to do one more thing? I was like, no, scratch that. It's not going to end with a call to action. Then number two, am I going to end it with this pretty bow, like tell them, retell them, all that? I'm like, no. So you kind of got to read the book to see how it ends. But I think it ends with a ton of encouragement, which everybody needs, everybody could use. So I submitted a small manuscript, or the entry requirements, to Freshwater Press, an independent publisher run by all women, and they're just on fire. And they wrote back requesting a little more information. And I was getting ready to go out of the country to Asia, where it was going to be very remote. And I was very worried about communications. Like, am I going to miss a call or an email? So when they asked for more information, I realized they're interested. And then they asked for a little more. So I kind of waited till that relationship grew a little. And I said, would you be able to tell me, like, are we going to do this dance before I go to Asia? And they're like, for a publisher and words are their business, they were like, no. And I thought, okay, I get it. So every chance on this trip, I was logging in where there was free Wi-Fi, in Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, wherever I was. I'm like, give me a minute. I need to pop in and check. And they said, we want to publish your book. We think there's a huge audience out there for it. There will be a contract waiting for you when you come back from your trip. So that's kind of the long story, the more fun side of the story. But I'm really glad I waited on a publisher. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Remember how we used to do all this stuff through the mail?
Yes.
Right. It's especially in the last 10 years or so, the idea of being out of touch and not being able to talk to someone immediately has gotten so foreign. But up to that point, you'd be like, drop it in the mail. We'll be in touch in a couple months, right? We were all fine with that. And I do want to go back to something you mentioned.
Yes.
Every chapter in the book has a personal story. This is the book right here. Everybody go get it. I think you can get the e-version on Amazon. I believe there's a paperback version as well. I read it. I loved every bit of this book. But in every chapter, every wellness chapter comes along with a personal story of a military person, a first responder, someone in a high-pressure job. And you mentioned that each of these stories comes with an identification of what that person's chaos is, what their anchor is, and what their mantra is. So can you explain a little bit more about those three ideas, what they are, and how identifying them helps us get from chaos to calm?
Sure. So we all have this chaos, whether I'll kind of go light, medium, and high. Like a light one might be just, you are tied to your schedule. You've got to pick up the kids at this time, or you've got to make it to this meeting. That might be your chaos. But for a lot of people, it's high intensity people is kind of how I labeled it. They cannot not show up. They can't call in sick. These are people, a lot of them tend to wear a uniform, run toward danger, not away from danger. Or they're just so critical. Maybe corporately, they're a one each, they're it. If they're gone, it shuts down the mission. So this is their chaos. And they know it. I did not have to ask deep questions. It's surface level. It is right there. And a lot of times high intensity people will just use veterans for an example. People say, oh, they don't want to talk about it. And I challenge that. I say they do want to talk about it, but it has to be the right environment, it has to be with the right folks and in a right setting. And what I do is we talk about it without triggering them. So that's very important too. You don't want someone to relive it so much that all of a sudden there they are. And I lead with my own, 9/11 story. I share some stories about being a paratrooper, a combat veteran, like I'm trying to share without reliving any kind of trauma, if you will. So then the anchor, it's this, and there's grounding anchors are very prevalent out there. Lots of people use them. Therapists use them. Life coaches use them. Teachers use them. You can know about something, but it doesn't mean you're doing it. So I've shaped the one that works really well for my clients in the nonprofit. And I have them think of a place that is very calming and safe to them, that is also real. I don't want them imagining a place. I don't want to take them out of their body. I want to reconnect them with their thoughts, mind, and feelings, like self. So we have them focus on this grounding anchor and really describe it. Use all of our senses, like what do you see, textures, smells, all of that. Then I add on, how does it make you feel? Because your body holds on to that. You can look at something and the body will react. I don't care if it's your favorite piece of pie or a certain smell, from your deployment. It takes you right back there, or something you hear. We hear something backfire. We can tell the difference between backfire and bullets, right? They're like, oh, somebody's shooting a gun. No, that's a vehicle, So I have them work through the feeling part too. But then different, and what works well is we got to sit with that. We got to stay with that. This isn't a checklist. So I use this simple framework. It's called a didactic cinquain. It's a big, sexy word for 5-line poem. Some people know a haiku is 4, but I walk you through it. So we think of that thing, and I'll use one example from a police officer out of the book. A rookie police officer, first time rolling, shots fired. He has to respond to a shooting, a murder. And so it starts out, he feels very peaceful just sitting on his porch. So that's like the noun. Then I say, describe it like with 2 adjectives. And I give them plenty of time. This is not to be rushed. You and I are talking in a conversation on an interview, so I will go at a faster pace, but I really want them to sit with it. And that can be tough work right there. And he came up with secure and comfortable. Then the next one is we need to give it some action. We live in a moving world. Nothing is static, right? So kind of the word a gerund is like where you action a word, like run becomes running. So he thought about it and came up with reclining, watching, and being. Then we talk a little more, and I'm interviewing, I'm taking notes. I didn't use a recorder at all because that can really change an interview. I did the old school, scribe, pen and paper, or pencil and paper. And he came up with patterned lines of grass. So when you really dug into it, that's what made him calm. So there was order. He could see his own effort in it. It's a beautiful little line, patterned line of grass. And then after we revisit those 4 lines, I just simply ask him, what's another word for porch? Because it's not really the porch. The porch takes you there, but you kind of got to get into it. And he said refuge. When he was at home, everything in order, his grass was cut. He just felt like it was his own little sanctuary. So with that, you can use that. You can use it on demand. You can also use it routinely in a on-demand situation. It could be like where he's really feeling amped up, or he's waiting on a stakeout, or, maybe he's kind of doing some kind of high pursuit. He can come back to that word, that anchor of refuge, that mantra, a word that you say over and over. And pretty soon, because he did the work and he knows it and his body knows it, he can feel his body relax. His mind can almost go there. So even though he's doing something dangerous, he's in the moment, he can use it on demand to find calm. In a regular sort of way, you could use it with a yoga practice. You could use it with a nighttime routine. You could do it just taking a rest where you like kind of tip your head down, massage your temples and say the word. But it's connected to you. There's some great other books out there. The Body Keeps the Score is a great book. And they say your tissues have issues. They hold on to things. So let's use that for good. Let's use that for that grounding anchor that we can always return to. And I find that people who like do the work and go through the process, that anchor or mantra lasts them a very long time. So since I've been doing this, I've been kind of associated with holistic wellness since 2007, but really deeply since 2016. I've only had like 3 mantras. So they kind of change seasonally. So it is something that kind of sticks with you. And I bet if we ask our listeners right now to think of a place that really feels grounding, safe, secure, calm, like you don't have to worry about anything. You can just be a human being and not a human doing. They know of a place. And for most people, like I would, rule of thumb, say 9 out of 10 people, there's a nature component about it. And that's not a surprise. So in the book, I write a whole chapter about nature-centric activities and how nature is a reset button. So circling back to those startup companies, if they can take a break, and walk outside, get grounded. If they can't and they're stuck in, a building or something, like look, visually see trees and grass or water. If they can't even do that, they're in some kind of skiff or, sterile environment. Hang a beautiful picture of a beach. Have a calendar that shows, some, homegrown farmers market vegetables or something. It matters. It matters to our body, our brain, and our mood.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure everyone, when you brought that up, is thinking of their place right now, or if they're having a hard time thinking of their place, thinking about what their place might be. I do want to take a break from talking about the book right now. I'll play a game. Are you up for a game?
Yeah.
All right.
Love games.
The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Don't be fooled by the word rapid. Please elaborate as much or as little as you'd like. We just want to get to know Raquel in a little bit different way than we've been getting to know you so far, okay?
Sure.
All right. Raquel Durden, rapid response round. Your time begins now. A podcast recommendation.
Ooh, let me see. Anything by Josh Becker. Coming Minimalist things. Gosh, I have so many other names. Travis Johnson is a go-to one. Julie Brand. Yours. I loved yours on cybersecurity. Oh my gosh. I can't do just one.
We don't really let people recommend this one because the whole point is for me to get more podcast recommendations for myself.
Yeah.
But you did it last, so we'll allow it this time. Travis Johnson is great. He actually is not on this show yet, and I need to get him on. But his stuff is great as well. He's a good friend of the show here, a good friend of the veterans community here in Las Vegas as well. What is a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
Hold on, I have one alibi. You one alibi on that. Simple and intentional as well. Simple and intentional. That applies to so many people, no matter if you're, corporate veteran or even running a classroom full of kids. So.
All right, awesome. What is a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
Breathing exercises, bar none. Your breath is always available to you. Your breath can amp you up. Like, oh my gosh, I have to be high energy. I'm going to walk out on a stage and I got to get people going. There's apnea fire. Then there's also breathing exercises that can help you sleep. You can do some 4-7-8, Dr. Wheel breath is. Then there's also just some pacing ones for clarity. I was a personal yoga instructor to ultra marathoners. These are differently wired people. Like a marathon is not enough. They like to run like 100 miles and they hit walls and different things. And we started doing box breathing for clarity for those moments where they felt like they were going to bonk. And I understand all those words now, but it was really fun figuring out which ones worked for them because they couldn't dial down so much and fall asleep running, which they've actually done. Okay. So that's just incredible. But breathing exercises, we need to teach our children how to do this. We need to do it with our seniors if we're caregiving for them, and we can use them to regulate, shift back and forth in our nervous system as the need arises.
Who is someone we should all be paying attention to?
Who is someone we should all be paying attention to? Is this like in the news world or like health and wellness world?
Anyone, anywhere.
Okay, so I would say off the top of my head, I'm going to stick with the wellness world first, is Dr. Michael Greger. He wrote a book, How Not to Die. And it is a big, fat, scary book, but when you open it, he takes the time. The first 5 chapters are on chronic diseases affecting Americans. So boy, if you want to hit home right there, that's important. Then the middle of it, he basically shares like this daily dozen things you can do. And the last third is just his works cited. So that big, scary book, you don't really read the rest. But my brain, I'm a retired military intelligence analyst. I dug deep into some of that research. And boy, he knows how to research. It was, gold standard, double-blind tests, peer edited, peer reviewed, all of that stuff. And he has really cracked the code on just how we are glazing over some things. For example, when he shares, he talks about like cholesterol. Call it what it is. It is heart disease. But by calling it its own thing, we think it's not as serious, But then he gets into how to do it. And he gives so much away. He has a blog as well, website, nutritionfacts.org, and you can go there and plug in any symptom you have, and he'll give you like a 1 to 4 minute video on what it is. And he's a medical doctor, not a PhD, so you can kind of take it to task. And I really respect his research and how simple he makes it and accessible. So we need to pay attention to him because our health is going down, our mortality rates are going down, we're eating food that's not food, it's causing stress. I think that's very, very important. And then our elected leaders, we need to pay attention because our system of checks and balances is really being challenged right now. Regardless of your political affiliation, I think we as a country, we need to make sure that those checks and balances are working. So I think we need to really pay attention to decisions that are being made and processes as well. So, yeah.
Agreed. What is your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
That is so funny. I have been asked this more than once, but there's that kind of fun song. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it because so many people have done their own little gist on it. But how about them fans? And, we're a football family. My husband is crushed that, UGA dogs didn't make it into the playoffs. But when you start singing about how about them fans, we all need fans. And then the song went viral and people had like old fashioned fans that unfold, like that they would have in church pews or funerals or whatever. And they can clack them and make noise. And I have literally carried one around. I've done one in a class. I just think it just makes me laugh, and I would use it for walkout music if I had a reason for that. How about them fans? And just go. because we all need fans. We all need a personal cheerleader, whatever you want to call it. Encouragement.
All right, I agree with that. Who or what is the biggest influence in your life?
Woo. I'm going to have to go high with this one. It truly is strong faith. It's Jesus. I'm a Christian. I'm very open-minded to, other, ancient wisdom and beliefs and respectful of them. But my faith has carried me through combat, jumping out of airplanes when I was 20-something. But then again, when I was in my 40s, I was like, what am I doing? This was fun when I was 20, but now I'm focused on the landing. As an advanced stage cancer survivor, I really kind of, had a moment of total surrender. And if you've never had a moment of total surrender, it's very hard to describe, where you just let go. And I kind of shared, like, I don't know how this happened, but I want to come out of it. So now I say I'm living bonus years, and I thank God for my bonus years. And I really have a simple litmus test. If I don't love or like something, I really just don't do it anymore. I find that to be very freeing, and I thank God for that. Like, I come back to that over and over and just say, if I'm living these bonus years, or my time is limited, do I really want to be doing X, Y, or Z? And again, it just seems so clear there. So strong faith. Yeah. And then the human form, I will share. I have a great partner, my husband, Dave. He's a 5-time Afghanistan combat veteran. We just ran a personal safety and security company. We closed the doors at the end of the year, and he is my partner, my fan, my everything. He's always up for whatever the next adventure is. He's there.
Besides yours, which is a book everyone should read, what is a book everyone should read?
James Nestor's Breath. James Nestor's Breath. So this is crazy. He takes a bizarre look at, because I want everyone to do breathing exercises, right? But he looks at it in a clinical way. He looks at it in a let's dispel myths way. And if you're like, I'm not going to read a book like that, I'm not into wellness. Well, I'm going to say, anyone who snores out there, and if you don't think you snore, ask someone you love if you snore. And if you snore, you need to read the book. We're doing all these things, and you might need that CPAP machine, you might not. And he gives a lot of remedies. And I've had family members, I've had veterans, I've had detective law enforcement people try it, and they're like, it's unbelievable, but it works. And some of them seem so silly. I'll give you an example. Medical tape across the mouth at night, you won't snore. It sounds crazy, but he'll explain why and walk you through it. And then, like I said, I work with a lot of athletes that want to increase their VO2 ox. And it's keeping your mouth closed for 30 seconds at a time while you're doing something hugely aerobic. All of a sudden, you will find out, like, I think it's called HRV, your recovery is so much faster. And I always like to say I'm the scientist and my body is the laboratory. So I was like, is this really working? So I've never worn the Apple Watch or Fitbit, but I got one of these little rings you put on your finger. There's a million names out there, but I did it and tracked the data, and I'm 56 years old. And I watched my age, my cardio age, drop to 49 years old, and I have the numbers to show it. And I was like, wow, that really worked, So again, let's bring it back to that person doing a startup. If you're short on sleep, if you need to recover quickly, read that book, or even read it selectively. And he uses himself as the experiment. And I don't want to tell you anymore because it's just fascinating, but I've gotten the book as a gift. I've given it. I've recommended it to book clubs, and I practice it. So it's a good one.
I'm glad you mentioned reading a book selectively, because that is a lesson I came to a little too late in life, I think. I always used to read books cover to cover. There were very few books I wouldn't finish. And I've learned that you can read books selectively, jump around, find the parts you're interested in. If it doesn't make sense, go back to something earlier and see if you can figure out how to make it make sense. You don't have to read them cover to cover and then put them down and be done with them.
I like that you shared that, because I wrote Dialed Down with that in mind. You can read it, and I would like people to read the intro and the foreword so they know how to use the book better. But you can jump around. If you want to read these stories because you can relate to them, jump around and read some of the stories and go, wow, that's my chaos. That's not my chaos. I can relate to that chaos, and jump in there. And you can also read the wellness practices in any order as well. But I like selective reading. I learned it definitely in the military, where, as an analyst, I got dumped on a lot. I had to do voracious amounts of reading and then consolidate it down to maybe a single paper or talking points for someone. And you're like, how do I do that? Well, you don't do that by reading it cover to cover. You have to jump in and find that golden nugget. So it's okay. We should give ourselves permission to read it and then revisit it too, and digest it. We have to take a moment and digest, like what we saw with our eyes. That's why layout is so important too. And then, how can I apply this? Try it out. Did it feel good? Did I try it correctly? A lot of us will read and we think we know, but we really need to read, apply, do, reflect, then you know.
Absolutely. What is your favorite winter recreational activity?
My favorite winter activity is seeing my family. Being military, we're spread out all over the place. I'm originally from Wisconsin. So growing up, we raised our son, who is also military now. He always wanted a white Christmas. So I would find my way back. And I love having a campfire. I like walking outside, whether it's walking the dog, walking in snowshoes, cross-country skiing, and just feeling that like kind of cold on your face and nose, and then coming in and being all cozy. That would be my number one, because I associate like winter with, I get to see my family, and then others, like yoga and reading. I do yoga pretty much every single day. So I also teach it, and I jokingly say, well, I'm doing it anyhow. I may as well go teach a class as well. I do a lot of, they call it karma yoga, where I just do it for free. And other times, I get brought in to lead others in it. But that is definitely a go-to wellness activity for me.
What is your dream vacation spot?
I think I already had it, so now I have to add to it. So after being a cancer survivor, someone encouraged me to make a bucket list, and I thought it was morbid. I was like, what? And then it was very freeing, and I enjoyed it. So I actually put Ireland on there. So Ireland, for that tiny little country, it literally has everything. It has the Cliffs of Moher, it has the ocean, it has sheep and cows, the greenest greens, Emerald Isle, right? It's just a fantastic country. And I said, I really want to go. And then my husband was doing his bucket list. I said, well, if I'm doing it, you're doing it. And he picked Costa Rica, which is beautiful. And it was very active vacation. But I said, we're going to Ireland first. I'm pulling the cancer card. And he goes, okay, you can do that once, but I never want to hear that again. So we ended up going to Ireland, and oh my gosh, best hiking and river. You can do anything. They have rivers, they have coasts. Highly recommend it. Easy to get around. I was like, I do not know the language, Gaelic. The words on the signs are like 13 letters long. But it was very easy to navigate. Loved it.
What is a trend you're excited about?
Well, a trend that I'm excited about, it's kind of tied to the reading world, but I just read in the New York Times how I think it was like 7.1 million paperback books were bought and read. We assume they're read, but everything was trending toward ebook and audiobook. But I want to use that to segue to skeptical about AI. I think AI should be used by professionals, but not instead of professionals. And I see especially the younger generation going, whoa, we better frame this up or put in some healthy boundaries. And I've even listened to young people talk as recently over Christmas. My own son and daughter-in-law, they felt blessed to be in professions that aren't going to be replaced easily or at all by AI. So I think the trend is using AI by professionals or by people, but not instead of. I don't want machines and thoughtless, because AI isn't generating something brand new. It has to exist out there, and then the machinations and algorithms are pulling it together. You know, we all heard about hallucinations, right? Like even the best AI is only about 85% accurate. Well, if people are running with 15% inaccurate, that could lead to some terrible outcomes. So trending AI, using it in a more healthy, boundary specific kind of way.
Yeah, you and I both know from looking at intel reports, from looking at data, you know, it's very easy to if you use the conventional wisdom or take the automatic approach, it's very easy to fool yourself and make mistakes. And so human judgment and skepticism is always important in anything. Last one,
Yes.
favorite sports team or player?
So I live in Athens, Georgia, home of UGA and Georgia football. And I will just say I like Green Bay Packers, you know, because that's the hometown, but UGA just because of the fervor. Like these are high school kids killing it, putting together, you know, putting out the effort to be like back-to-back national champions and doing well. And then I don't know if you follow the quarterback at all, but Gunnar Stockton, he's just the kind of kid, like, you know, just a good country kid. Yeah, not to compare apples and oranges, but you know, the previous quarterback was kind of flashy and had this, I think, like a Lamborghini. He comes in with his grandpa's pickup truck and he's bragging about how many miles are on it. And he just seems like such a down-to-earth, good guy. He can, you know, run the ball. He can throw the ball. He can get beat up and keep coming back. There was a moment in the last game where I was like, how do you get up from that? So the whole resilience thing, yeah, we'll go with that.
That's great. I know what it's like to adopt the college football team somewhere, because I didn't go to a university that was a big college football school, and I went almost my entire Air Force career not really paying attention to college football that much. And then my last assignment in the Air Force was in Alabama. And if you've never been to Alabama, if you've never lived in Alabama, and you're from outside Alabama, there's this really kind of unique thing in Alabama. They make you choose. You show up, they give you about a week, they go, you have to choose one of these teams. You either have to be Roll Tide, University of Alabama, or War Eagle, Auburn University. I don't know if it's like that in Georgia, but I know in Alabama, they make you choose. And so I gave myself about a week. I chose University of Alabama, so Roll Tide. They didn't do great this year. I mean, they did okay. Mm-hmm. They got into the postseason, but they didn't wrap it up great. But you know, so Roll Tide. And thank you for playing our game.
All right. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, those were some good questions.
Yeah, so I want to go back. We talked a little bit about your experience in the military. You did something really kind of unique in the military. You were a casualty assistance officer, which a lot of our audience probably doesn't know what that is. So if you'd explain what that is to us, and then how did that experience shape what you've been working on now with the book and the nonprofit and that kind of thing?
All right. So a casualty assistance officer is a military member who outranks the person who is deceased, that is assigned to the family to help them navigate what comes next, to navigate funerals, final benefits, answer questions, help navigate the grief with resources. Casualty assistance officers rely heavily on the chaplain corps for that, spiritual component. They're plugged into commanders and senior NCO leadership to give them feedback on what you're doing. But it's really, the military can look like this foreign entity, and we speak in a foreign language with all our acronyms. So by signing a casualty assistant officer to the family, it's really respectful way of saying, like, we are with you. We're going to guide you through this process. And you literally stay there. There's a kind of a set core amount of time, but if the family needs you longer, you stay. So during 9/11, the Pentagon was my higher headquarters, and an individual that I was assigned a casualty assistant officer for, a very senior individual. And this person, it turned out to be very much a challenge. I will share with you, please have your affairs in order. You know, if your family changes, you know, your marriage, or you have more children than what's, you know, identified in your will or plan, just please keep it current. There's a little plug. We had some challenges with this, but I felt very purposeful. You know, I survived. This person did not. I was able to help his family navigate. And at this point, everybody came down. You know, this was a national event that was, you know, through their lens, that was happening to their family. So we had his brothers, we had children. There was a fiance but not married that had to navigate, and you know, just being able to help them. But the first task that came up was positively identifying them, and that's where I found out, you know, clear communication and just being transparent, don't beat around the bush, really worked well. So I looked at his family every day. I would be working with the family because, like, the Red Cross put him up at a hotel nearby. And I'm like, listen, we've got to positively identify your loved one. And I said, it would be very helpful if you could get me, you know, razor, hairbrush, toothbrush. And my family worked well together. They wanted to, like, you know, do what was right for their loved one. They wanted to make sure they received all the benefits they should, which is not selfish. I mean, this person has earned them. You know, they're deserving to go to you. But it was also chaotic because each one of them wanted to talk to you privately. And so in the military, we have these things called S staffs, where you have like an administrative person or a HRO, you have your intel, you have your operations, you have your logistics. So I was like, how am I going to work with this family more efficiently? So I explained the S staff to them, and I said, who wants to be my S1? And that was so helpful because the person, you know, they would tell me all the family members, because some would come and then leave. Some were on FML and then leave. And I had to report in, you know, who was there for my family. Logistics, we could give them all rooms. We could give them phones, temporary phone cards and things. So I had a logistics count. And then the family that really empowered the family because they all wanted to have like a role. And I get it. It was something tangible that they could like push themselves into. While this was going on, and after the initial attack, I got called down to the Pentagon, and I share this in the book, and I hope this isn't, you know, overly disturbing to anyone, but the mission was really, they retasked the band, because the band was available, to look for, they called it the ABCs: airplane parts, body parts, and computer parts. And if they happened to come across like a classified document or thing out there, well, then they could bring it to me, and I would help make sure it got identified and secured and put away. So I wasn't out there walking through the debris, but the band members were, and they really were unsung action kind of heroes at that time, because that JP8 field kept burning for a long, long time. And, you know, they kind of had to do the grid and search and all of that. But by doing that, and also having casualty assistant officers, you know, I feel really good about it, that, you know, the people at the Pentagon were identified, where I believe to this day, even people at the Twin Towers in New York, there's people missing, unidentified, you know, and I can't imagine what that pain does to the family members.
Absolutely. So you talked about how we, our leaders as of teams. You talked about how you were leading that team who was doing that searching, doing those grids. It's one thing for us to learn to dial down and achieve calm for ourselves. As leaders, how can we
Mm-hmm.
foster the ability to dial down for the people on our team?
I think that's very important. Again, we throw around the word resilience. We want you to be your best. So what do? We equip. We give them the best equipment, the best comms, the lightest gear, clarify the mission. But we need to look at the back end of that. We need to share how, what is, we want to avoid burnout is basically a key for leadership. Burnout is that, I think the World Health Organization defines it as that feelings of exhaustion. So we need to be able to identify exhaustion. What does that look like? Skipping meals, sleepy, living on caffeine, other stresses, losing hair, changes in people. So you've got to know your people so that you can notice what exhaustion looks like, and even feelings of exhaustion. People will talk it out, like you can hear it in their language. It will shift. Reduce productivity. So if you have this high performing team, whatever it looks like, and all of a sudden there's a dip, don't cast it off as, oh, it's just the seasonal slump. Is it reduced productivity? Because they're literally teetering on the edge of burnout. And then also, this is a big one, and I think that HR folks, professionals can help us with this, is that sense of detachment from one's own job. You and I had a high degree of purpose serving in uniform. Every day you put the uniform on, I didn't, you were important, that job was important. You were important to the team, the job, the mission. But also when there's a desensed or a sense of detachment, you're going to see this in turnover. You're going to see this in like quality people not opting for maybe internal promotion or hiring opportunity. You're going to see that like lack of enthusiasm. So I think we have to know like the symptoms of burnouts, be actively looking for them, but don't wait for it to get there. So build in some downtime, build in some celebrations for success, and then how we reward people. I love this example because like sometimes we reward people the same way because we're worried about fairness. Is that really fair, or is that just like kind of being homogeneous? So if you're rewarding someone, let's say they all crashed on a project for you and they did stellar, exceeded your expectations, or even just met them, maybe to the single parent, a way to say thank you is time off. Give them a little time off so they can go, decompress, pick up their kids, surprise them at a play, whatever. Maybe to the hard charger, it means like, you've done a great job on this. We're going to put you on this task force special project. We're going to send you this school as an investment in you, not more work. Like how we reward people can really kind of, remember that whole, are you motivated by love or are you motivated by fear? A lot of us tend to be led with that motivation by fear. When things get desperate, then we might look for help. No, like how do we keep them in love with what we're doing? And then model the behavior you want to see in others. That is the biggest one. So I feel pretty comfortable dropping this name, but I did some contract work for Mitsubishi, and they have a lot of Japanese principles that flow through their companies, and they have a lot of companies, and they're very diverse. But when the CEO put yoga on his calendar, when the CEO put 20 minutes of reading on his calendar and made his calendar public to his direct reports, it made it okay for them to do it. And maybe it wasn't yoga. Maybe it was reading and taking a walk at lunch. Maybe it was whatever. But he wanted to role model the behavior and make sure it was okay for everybody, kind of the trickle down theory, like everyone below can also do this and not be in trouble, or not try and do it on the side, like do it and talk about it. And then we see it too, like have a mindfulness program, but explain what it is and the benefits, like how it can relieve stress, how it can lower your blood pressure, reduce chronic pain, improve sleep, like whatever motivates your force. They have to see value in it before you spring it on them. Otherwise, it's just one more to do for them. So I'm going in on Monday to a major university to share mindfulness techniques. And at the very end, after the whole time training with me, I'm just going to ask them to pick 3 to 5 that they can weave into their new year. And that will be powerful, because choice is empowering. What appeals to you might not appeal to me. And so I think leaders can do a lot. And why allow like any, of your workforce, especially your top tier players, to burn out or feel detached from their job? That, and mindfulness can really help them just stay the course.
Absolutely. Now, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but as we're wrapping up, tell us about your nonprofit. Who does it serve? How does it help people?
Okay. So Humble Warrior Wellness and Yoga, we go by Humble Warrior. It's designed to support women veterans and women first responders, and it's run by women who have served or are still serving. We celebrated 7 years last year, so we're going into our 8th year, and we love our male colleagues, but a lot of the resources for veterans and first responders are really designed for the male colleague. And maybe women don't feel comfortable connecting, or they don't feel safe. So we have this resource, and it's 2 pillars. We focus on connection and wellness. We introduce and explore and resource wellness. So if there's anyone who wants to make a donation, we are always open to time, money, or resources. We've got some great corporate, there's a lot of corporations in the wellness world. And we always like to say, like, if you want to work with us, if it goes in or on us, we want it to be, chemical free or organic, because we were exposed to so much. They're actually measuring toxic exposure now regularly for all military members. My cancer was tied to that. And then we get together in small groups to explore wellness. And then every year we have a bigger group. If you've ever plugged in with us, then you're welcome to come back. And we do like a big gratitude walk and day of wellness. And we usually try and do it at a state park, just to highlight the beautiful natural resources that are available out there for everyone. And because nature is so refreshing and recharging and good for us. We look forward to, we have an all volunteer board, which I think is also very, it speaks well. Like, we're in it for the team approach, and love doing what we're doing. We like to share it forward.
Outstanding. Well, it's been so great talking to you today. I want to thank you for joining us, Raquel. The
Thanks.
book is Dial Down. So everybody go find it. Everybody go read it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. And Raquel, where can everyone find the book, and where can they find you so they can thank you for joining us today?
Well, I think an easy way is just RaquelDurden.com. You can buy the book in all its forms. I made it easy. I put the link for Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Bookshop, and my publisher, Freshwater Press. But you'll also learn a little bit more about me. I have an appearance button. So if you want to see like where I am, where I'm speaking or doing, you can plug into that. I try and be very transparent about sharing this message, amplifying the message of wellness. Humble Warrior, our website is humblewarrior.org. And if you go there, it is a treasure trove of wellness activities and resources. We have it organized, highly organized by a librarian, Army veteran named Gabby. And if you want to just connect to the food, there's food and recipes. If you're connected, like I have sore shoulders, bad back, whatever, you can go into our yoga pose directory and find the 1 or 2 postures just for you or what you're dealing with. We list our events. There's also the opportunity to donate there. So humblewarrior.org, because we're a nonprofit, treasure trove of resources. You can also find us on our YouTube channel if you want to participate in free mindfulness training, free yoga. Just go to YouTube and write out the whole thing, Humble Warrior Wellness and Yoga, and you'll find it. So Embrace it, connect with us, explore wellness, and then pick a few that you want to weave into your lifestyle. Small changes can make a big, big difference.
They absolutely can. And we will put all those links in the episode description so you don't have to go looking for them. Thank you again for Raquel for joining us today. Really loved this conversation. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, I don't know how you couldn't. If you found it valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're on a podcast platform where you are able to give a review, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review, since we're asking you all for favors right now anyway. So we've got lots more amazing conversations coming your way. Go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.